Hello, it's Marcia. Welcome back to Then and There. I have another journal I wanted to share with you. This is another one of the large soft cover fabric journals that I make. This one doesn't have a theme per se. I guess you could say it has a color scheme, which is this beautiful green with the white. It has different shades of green with like this fabric here has green leaves in this light green and darker green and a mid green, and it's just very summery and bright and just yells summertime. And so I made this journal using some vintage lace here on the cover, as well as for the tie. I attached this one of the fabric cluster flowers that I make with a vintage button here in the middle. Well, two vintage buttons, sorry, and some of the leaf fabric and some darker fabric, and some just pieces of vintage lace and hanky and some crocheted lace, and it is attached to the tie with this vintage what are these called? A straight pin? Or, I don't know, actually. I'm just going to put that back on there so that it doesn't come off. But then you can take the flower off and move it where you want to on the book. It just comes off of this strap here, if you want it to, or you can leave it there. The strap is attached to the closure. The closure is attached to the spine of the journal. The journal has this beautiful leaf fabric, like I've already pointed out, all along the front and the back, all across. And I took this vintage doily. Again, I have to try to stop saying with this crocheted trim around it. It is not a terribly yellowed doily. It is still fairly white. It has a bit of a kind of an ivory color. I hope the lighting is okay today. It should be. It's pretty bright day out. Okay, so like I was saying, that is just pinned on there. And there's the front. I did kind of the faux freehand, or I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's not freehand. Free motion. Faux free motion on the cover with the sewing machine. You can kind of see that. And I did some stitching on the doily as well. I did sort of a spiral pattern just to kind of sew that doily on. And we can go inside. Oh, and of course the edges are frayed as usual, and I left the tails on the pages as usual. The inside is this, it's kind of it's almost a burlap colored fabric, but it is not burlap. It's a cotton linen, and it has some hand embroidery on here, which was not finished. I got it at an estate sale. The lady that had started it had passed, and this was just part of a pattern. You can kind of sort of see right here, there's a bit of where the pattern was ironed on, but it hadn't been finished. And it's got this daisy pattern and leaves, and it runs through to the back, and there's a daisy there. She didn't do the center part of the daisy yet, but in there you can see the running part of that. I thought about covering that up, but then I thought, that was someone's handiwork, and I don't know. I like seeing remnants of things as they are. I don't like altering things to the point of not being able to recognize what they were originally. So I left it at that. You can do what you want to with that. A pocket here with some more crocheted lace. Okay. Get your thoughts together. In the large pocket, we have a vintage image and a tag that I made. Everything, of course, is coffee dyed, except for some of the vintage images, which are just on white coffee dyed, which I inked. So they are aged. I left this blank here. You could write or stamp a little word or date or something if you wanted to. There's a little green rose stamped right there. some music paper. Well, it's not real music, you know what I mean, pattern paper. There's a stamp there of a bird. The coffee dyed paper, this one you can see pretty well. I did a technique similar to what Gibbet does with her papers, where she puts the green leaves on the paper as it's drying. I did mine with just coffee. I didn't use any inks or dyes. I just did it with coffee, and I stacked the papers. Some of them came out really well, and others not so much. It was an experiment. There was a downfall to that, which is the stems and the veins did kind of, in some pages, they left a crease in the paper, which, I mean, makes sense because there was weight on top of them, which caused them to indent the paper. But it's not, it didn't ruin the paper. It's just, it added more texture, I guess. These were some little strawberry leaves, which I put on there. Those came out really well. And you can see them on both sides. More faint on one side than the other, but, and there are several of those throughout the book. Here's some more stamping. And some leaf trim. This is a calendar page, which I made a pocket. Here there's a little squirrel image and some fabric stitched along the side. A vintage image of a fairy, which you can journal on. And you can see it was a calendar page. It's a book page. There's another leaf print there. A children's book page about bugs. It has butterflies and it also has bees. And I put this poem here about the brown bee. It was from a children's storybook, and just some ribbon stitched on there. And I thought that really went really well with the bee. Like I said, there's no theme other than summer, and bees are a big part of summer. This is the other side of the bee page, and so I put this vintage image of a beekeeper magazine on there. It's clipped on with a paper clip which has a bead on it. And I did reinforce that with some washi tape because the paper cracked a bit when I folded it. A little bit of a leaf imprint there. The other side of the book page. This is a book page which I just coffee dyed and stitched on. It's about chamomile, and it has a vintage image of chamomile here. And it talks about its medicinal uses. This is a book page illustration as well. I backed it with some coffee dyed paper, and that leaf imprint came out really well. And you can see there's some veins from another leaf on there. A little whimsical bird stamp there. This has a very light stencil pattern on it in a pale green color. This is a little notebook tag that I made using this image here. It says from my garden journal. Oops. Tucks behind here, and this is also a card which you can write on, and you can tuck something behind the card as well. Did some stenciling here, the fern stencil, some leaf charm on a lace tab. This was a vintage image. I put a little tab on there and stitched around it. In this pocket I did some sari silk trim and some more of that fabric. This is a leaf button, and it was a raised button, so I just tied a little piece of lace around that just to give it some more, just to add to the dimension of it. A book page about birds, collaged onto this bridge score pad card. You can journal on that. This was another one of the children's storybook poems that I just cut out and put onto this envelope, which works as a pocket for a tag for journaling. And apparently that's all the farther it's going to go now. There's another dragonfly stamp here in green. There's a doily. Well, I used a doily to stencil a pattern on here, which I think you can see. I'm not 100% sure. Some pattern paper here that's been in my stash forever, and I made a pocket out of it. Another one of the children's book page poems. You can kind of see the image on the reverse side, which doesn't really bother me that much, but you can journal on the back of that. It's another one of those leaf prints. A journaling card tucked into this spot here, which is another one of those calendar pages, and I did some collaging or decoupage here with book text, which is about deer. So book page image here, some ladies and their children from the 50s. Another page from the children's book about bugs. A inked doily, some sari silk. This does have a little charm here with some beads. This is another book page which makes a pocket, the side pocket, and this is a book page as well. This is about it's not lemon. What is it? Persimmon? No, bergamot. I knew as soon as I said persimmon that was wrong. And this little image here makes a tuck spot, which has this little card. I'm not sure what these are, like flashcards, and a little vintage receipt which has been coffee dyed. And I dyed these leaves here and some lace. Some stamping with a branch and a bird. The other side of the book page makes another pocket. I put in a journaling card with some vintage wallpaper, and this is handmade paper which I made and then inked up with, I embossed it. Sorry, I couldn't think for a second. I embossed it in the process of making it, and then I inked on it to kind of bring out that emboss a little bit. And the back side is just a contract record, so just a bit of ephemera. Tucks in there. This image here was just folded down from the other side. I like that it had a bird here and then also a bird's nest there. The lace there. Here is a little tuck spot with a tag with a key charm on it and some sari silk for journaling. This is also a tuck spot here with this vintage image of a peacock. Whoops. That's another page. This also has some light stenciling on it. The doily. This I just did some trim and, or some fabric, sorry, and some lace trim. This is a part of the bug book. A little bit of stamping there, some butterflies. Another wallpaper pocket with just a note card in it, or a note paper, sorry. And this was the other side of the calendar page, and this is a tiny tuck spot there as well behind the peacock. So writing space there. Vintage image of a frame stitched on with some wood grain vellum and some ribbon, some gingham ribbon. A vintage image of some flowers. This is a journaling card which I backed with coffee dyed paper. It is raised. It has a raised pattern on it of these fern leaves, some lace, and some sari silk sewn on. I do want just a disclaimer. There was a bit of paint on the reverse side and it made a bump that I didn't realize was there before I put the coffee dyed paper on, which I didn't realize until after. So there's a tiny bit of a bump there, but sure that can be worked around or covered up. A little tag here made also with the vintage wallpaper and some lace, coffee dyed paper for writing, and this little acetate flower makes a little pocket for a tag which says date on this side and it's just plain on the other. I like that the circle circles the date. Small things. Oh, and there's a butterfly charm on the paper clip. Another book page about flowers, another leaf imprint. Here's a fabric tab which I stitched on some little sequins. Another book page about gardening. Just a bit of ephemera stitched on there. A pocket on this side and an applique. This is a tag which has this flip up here. I did some stamping on it and collage. Put on some yarn trim. A light leaf imprint there. Some ledger paper, which I made a pocket out of, well, a double pocket. It has a vintage receipt, which has been coffee dyed in that pocket, and the fabric makes another pocket, which I did this pressed leaf under wax paper and coffee dyed cardstock, and you can see it has some lines on it from another piece of paper that was on it while it was drying. I pinned on this little charm here, which has a photograph of sun shining through some leaves. A book page from Thumbelina. This was a 1979 copy, and I really liked the images, and especially that one with all the green leaves and Thumbelina, and just made that a tip-in with some fabric and stitched that on. Here's the doily stencil here. Sometimes I just can't talk, I don't know. Little fabric tab, an image of some grapes. This is ledger paper, which had the holes on it already, and I just tied on some yarn. Some more leaf imprint. This was a magazine page, which I layered up with this paper. I don't know what it's called. It's a very light, like webbing type paper. That was on the calendar page. Some more fabric, a stamp. This was a book page as well from an Ideals magazine, and this was from a different estate, but you can tell this was an embroidery that was started but not finished. You can see the pattern, but there's no stitching on top of the pattern, but it was a really cute little bird and a birdhouse, and I just had to use it anyways. Some more leaf prints, book page, vintage image of a moth, and a time card, and just another little card for journaling. And there's the back of the book. So you can see, now I'm going to include with this book another little charm that I made. This was very simple, but I thought it goes with, I think that it goes with the book really well. The colors match. This is a vintage earring. It was a clip-on earring, and I just took the back of it off and attached it to this frame charm and made a little charm that way. I thought about putting them together, but I just felt that they compete for attention, sort of. And I mean, you could do them both together. You could just pin them on however you wanted to, just like so, or you could move one and put it inside the book. It is entirely up to whomever receives it. You will receive both pennants with the journal. And now I'm getting all tongue-tied. And so I will call this video done, and thank you for watching. I appreciate everyone's comments and support. Thank you, and goodbye.